BNB spoilers. Dylan's confession makes Finn start asking questions. This week on The Bold and the Beautiful, Dr. John Finnegan, Tanner Novlin, got quite the shock. Hayes' former teacher, Ms. Dylan, arrived at the Shin house to apologize to the good doctor for flattening his daughter, Luna Nozo, Lisa Yamada, like a pancake. Dylan's confession creates chaos. Finn took the news well, considering the circumstances. But BNB spoilers say Dylan's visit could be what fuels Luna's father to start asking questions about her death. When the LAPD confirmed Luna was dead and gone, everyone was so relieved they didn't care to ask for any details. But Dylan's confession could change that. Dr. John Finnegan will reportedly be rattled after coming face to face with the person that killed Luna with their car. In fact, he might even decide that he wants some closure and contact the morgue to discuss cremation or funeral arrangements. Finn finds something concerning. Poppy and Lee made it very clear that they weren't interested in anything that had to do with Luna, and her own mother announced she was happy she was gone. If anyone is going to do the right thing and take care of Luna's final arrangements, it is going to have to be her father. Right now, Luna's remains are probably still at the morgue, waiting to be claimed. The Bold and the Beautiful fans are convinced that Luna Nozawa isn't really dead. When Finn goes looking for her body to arrange a burial, the truth is going to come out. Or he will at least find a clue pointing to a cover-up or another fake death. Dylan's apology tour might have just opened a huge can of worms. Speaking of dead Luna, where is her body? Do you think Finn will figure out the truth after chatting with Dylan? The air in the Cliff House, usually filled with the comforting sounds of the ocean and the promise of a peaceful life for Dr. John Finn Finnegan and his wife, Steffi Forrester, was thick with a palpable and devastating silence. It was a silence only moments old, born from a confession that had the force of a tidal wave, a wave that threatened to wash away the hard-won closure Finn had fought for since the tragic death of his troubled daughter, Luna. This is the very sad news, the ultimate gut punch to a father's heart that The Bold and the Beautiful delivered this week. The driver who hit and killed the runaway murderer, Luna Nozawa, was none other than Miss Dylan, the beloved preschool teacher of Finn and Steffi's son, Hayes. Dylan's tearful, heartbreaking admission at the Cliff House, supported by a clearly shaken Electra Forrester and Will Spencer, was a moment of raw, unscripted agony. "I killed your daughter," she choked out, the words tearing a hole in the room. This single, horrific sentence was the culmination of weeks of unspoken guilt, a dark secret she could no longer carry. But while Dylan's confession was intended to bring truth and closure, it instantly became the catalyst for a new, excruciating chapter of grief and suspicion for Finn. The immediate aftermath, a father's conflicted heart. Finn's initial reaction was not the immediate rage one might expect toward the person responsible for his child's death. Instead, it was a terrifyingly calm, internal collision of logic and raw, paternal sorrow. Finn had always been conflicted about Luna, the daughter who had descended into a spiral of deceit, crime, and violence, but she was still his blood. The shock on his face, a mask of pure devastation, was a performance in controlled suffering. He believed Dylan. How could he not? She was a kind, gentle soul, a woman whom he and Steffi trusted implicitly with their own son. She was also one of Luna's many victims, held captive and threatened during Luna's terrifying crime spree at the beach house. He understood intellectually that the foggy, frantic night of the accident was just that, an accident. He even offered her a shocking, profound act of grace and forgiveness, pulling her into a hug and telling her she was a good person who deserved to reclaim her life. He told her he was putting the Luna horror story behind him. But forgiveness is a conscious choice, and closure is a lie told to soothe the soul in turmoil. The inevitable questioning, shadows of doubt. The true sorrow of this story is not the accident itself, but the internal chaos it sparks in Finn. As the initial shock wears off and the embrace of forgiveness fades, the good doctor begins to live up to his professional calling. He starts asking questions. And these questions are not for the police. They are for himself, for Dylan, and for the very nature of truth. The questions begin subtly, whispered late at night to Steffi, who is desperately trying to move on. 1. The question of timing and motive. Dylan claimed it was an accident on a foggy night, but Finn's medical mind, trained to observe, to analyze, to question, begins to pick at the details. Dylan was terrified of Luna. She was traumatized by the experience. Was she simply driving in the area? Or was she, consciously or unconsciously, looking for the woman who had terrorized her and threatened the life of the family she worked for? She was a victim, Steffi. But does that make her immune to human impulse? To a desperate need for justice? Or even quiet revenge? The thought is a betrayal of Dylan's character, yet it lingers like a persistent virus in Finn's mind. He saw the sheer terror in Dylan's eyes after Luna's original rampage. He wonders if, in that moment on the road, seeing Luna, the source of her trauma, something primal took over. 2. The incompleteness of the story. Dylan's confession, while tearful, was also brief. She was on the road. It was foggy. She hit Luna. End of story. But Finn needs more. He needs a timeline. What was she doing there? Where was she coming from? Why did she leave the scene? The police, respecting Dylan's anonymity, had only confirmed the death. Now that she's come forward, the official investigation is likely to reopen. But Finn can't wait for bureaucratic paperwork. He begins to grill Electra and Will, trying to piece together Dylan's hours before the crash. Their vague, protective answers only fuel his growing suspicion that the full truth, the context, the terrifying internal monologue of Dylan as she drove, is being held back. The more details he lacks, the more his medical brain fills the void with potential scenarios, many of them darker than the simple accident he accepted. 3. The burden of forgiveness. Finn's hug was one of grace, but it's becoming a chain around his ankle. He publicly forgave the woman who killed his daughter. This act was meant to be a final, cathartic step, a way to move on with Steffi and Hayes. Now, every new question that arises, every shadow of doubt, is a direct challenge to that forgiveness. How can he take back the kindness he offered? The more he questions Dylan's story, the more he looks like a man who doesn't believe his own words. This is the ultimate sad news for Finn. He has traded his peace for a moral high ground he can't sustain. If he finds a lie or even a deliberate omission, the fallout will be colossal. He won't just be dealing with a criminal, but with a betrayed friend whom he personally exonerated. The impact on Steffi and the Forrester Finnegan future. Steffi is Finn's rock, but even her foundation is beginning to crack under the pressure. She supported Finn's decision to forgive Dylan and is desperate to uphold their pact, to move on and never speak of Luna again. But Finn's relentless need for truth is tearing the pact Angeles, to shreds. California. December 6th, 2025. The glamorous, often turbulent world of Los Angeles' elite has been ripped open today by a devastating truth that few could have imagined. In a move that has sent shockwaves through the fashion houses of Forrester Creations and the offices of Spencer Publications, a confession has finally brought an end to the agonizing months-long mystery surrounding the tragic hit-and-run death of Luna Nozawa. But instead of closure, the truth has delivered a crippling blow of chaos, grief, and unimaginable betrayal. The confessor is none other than Dylan, a former art teacher and social acquaintance of the powerful Forrester and Finnegan families. In a series of emotionally charged confrontations, first to Electra Forrester and then to Dr. John Finn Finnegan and his wife Steffi, Dylan admitted that she was the driver of the car that struck and killed Luna Nozawa as Luna fled from the police near the beach house last summer. This is not just a sensational tabloid scoop. It is a cataclysmic event that redefines the very nature of Luna's death. It transforms a faceless crime into a heartbreaking personal tragedy, forcing the city to reckon with the moral ambiguity of a secret held for months by someone within their closest social circles. The air today in Los Angeles is thick with a collective, profound sadness, a heavy silence punctuated only by the cries of the wounded and the furious demands for justice. Broken heart, the agony of the accident, a tale of trauma and fate. The news that Dylan, a seemingly kind and gentle figure, was the one behind the wheel has left those closest to the situation reeling. For months, the identity of the driver had been protected by the police, fueling rampant speculation and suspicion among the city's power brokers. The official line had been that the death was a tragic accident, a terrible twist of fate involving a person fleeing law enforcement. Dylan's confession, however, paints a picture of a soul cracking under the unbearable weight of unconfessed guilt. Sources close to the Forrester family reveal that Dylan's motivation for keeping silent was rooted in her own previous trauma involving Luna. It is known that Luna, during her violent rampage earlier this year, had held Dylan hostage, leaving the teacher deeply shaken and psychologically scarred. When Luna suddenly appeared on the road that fateful night, Dylan claims she was in a state of panic and had no time to react, insisting the collision was a horrific, unforeseen accident and not an act of revenge. But for the victim's family, particularly Luna's father, Dr. John Finn Finnegan, the distinction between accident and malice is proving incredibly difficult to reconcile. "She killed my daughter. Accident or not, my daughter is gone," a source close to Finn reported, indicating the doctor is oscillating between overwhelming grief and a deep-seated anger that threatens to consume him. The initial reports of Finn's reaction to the confession were mixed. While there are accounts suggesting he eventually offered Dylan a hug and a fragile gesture of forgiveness, a shocking moment of grace given the circumstances, the emotional toll is undeniable. Finn is now grappling with the fact that Luna, his troubled and estranged daughter, was struck down by someone who was once an accepted, even trusted, figure in his family's life. Classical building the legal and ethical earthquake. Was justice served by silence? The central tenet of the chaos that has erupted today lies in the legal and ethical quagmire created by the police's decision to withhold the driver's identity. Investigators previously confirmed that Dylan would not face legal trouble, concluding that she could not have reasonably predicted Luna's sudden, reckless movement onto the road. This legal immunity, however, is a cold comfort to a public and a family yearning for moral accountability. The police had argued that protecting the driver's anonymity was necessary to maintain the integrity of the investigation and prevent vigilante action. Dylan's decision to confess now, months later, has turned that protective shield into a flashpoint of public debate. Did the police obstruct justice? Critics are questioning if the police prioritized a single citizen's comfort over the grieving family's right to know the full truth of their loved one's death. What is the cost of delayed truth? The months of suspicion and lingering pain for the Finnegan, Forrester, and Spencer families could have been alleviated, or at least focused, had the information been disclosed sooner. The delay allowed the wound to fester, and now the revelation is not a suture, but a fresh, deep tear. Is forgiveness possible? Dylan is free from legal peril, but she is now subject to the court of public opinion. Can a person who harbors a secret of this magnitude ever truly move past it? And more importantly, can the families affected ever truly forgive? The confession has forced a painful re-examination of the entire Luna Nozawa saga, dragging all the players back into the public eye and raising painful questions about their roles, their judgments, and their relationships. Houses fallout at the Cliff House and Forrester creations. The revelation has unleashed unprecedented emotional and relational chaos within the Forrester and Finnegan dynasties. Electra Forrester's burden. Electra Forrester, who was one of the first to hear Dylan's tearful admission, is now tasked with navigating a devastating personal conflict. She reportedly feels a mixture of shock and sympathy, understanding the trauma that preceded the accident, yet completely overwhelmed by the gravity of the secret. Her position is unenviable, caught between her family, her friends, and the painful need for closure. The weight of this secret, and now its public fallout, is a heavy cross for the young socialite to bear. Steffi and Finn's pact. For Steffi Forrester Finnegan and her husband Finn, the emotional landscape is precarious. While Finn grapples with the loss of his daughter and the shock of the confessor's identity, Steffi is reportedly trying to be a compassionate support system for both her husband and, surprisingly, for Dylan. Steffi, who has a history of showing empathy for those who have suffered, is said to believe Dylan acted without malice. However, sources indicate a fundamental tension is brewing. Steffi and Finn have made a pact to put the Luna horror story behind them and focus on their future. But how can they move on when the person responsible for the final, tragic chapter is someone they know? The constant, haunting presence of this truth threatens to erode the very foundation of their hard-won stability. The ripple effect on Ridge and Brooke. Even the patriarch and matriarch, Ridge and Brooke, are said to be discussing the confession's potential impact on the family's reputation and business relationships. The chaos is spreading far beyond the immediate players, infecting the corporate air of Forrester Creations and Spencer Publications, where loyalty and ambition often collide. Studio microphone, a nation's sadness, and a call for compassion. The news is dominating headlines, fueling impassioned debates across social media, talk shows, and news outlets. The collective sadness is palpable, a reflection of the difficult truth that sometimes, even in the most protected lives, a single, unavoidable accident can trigger a chain reaction of tragedy, trauma, and devastating secrets. The Dylan Luna narrative is a sobering reminder that human actions, even those ruled accidental by law, have profound, saturated with fleeting digital anxieties. A story has emerged that has silenced the chatter and gripped the collective heart. It is a story of heroism and devastating discovery, centered on the unlikeliest of figures. Finn, a young, universally beloved figure synonymous with courage and unwavering optimism. The headline, stark and heavy, barely scratches the surface of the emotional turmoil it signifies. Today's very sad news, Finn finds something concerning. But this wasn't a concern about a lost artifact or a momentary setback. This was a seismic shift, a tragic realization that threatens the very foundation of his identity and the hope he represents to all who follow his journey. A hero defined by lightness. To understand the depth of this despair, one must first understand Finn. For years, he has been the embodiment of unadulterated, innocent heroism. He is the one who rushes toward danger with a cheerful battle cry, the one who never doubts the virtue of a noble cause. His world, a tapestry of the whimsical and the fantastic, was always viewed through a lens of radiant, albeit naive, confidence. He was the eternal truth-seeker, the self-proclaimed defender of justice whose emotional core was defined by simple, pure bonds of friendship and a boundless capacity for joy. His adventures were exciting, his losses surmountable, and his spirit was, quite simply, unbreakable. But the world, as we know, is rarely so simple, and as Finn has matured, the shadows have grown longer, creeping in from the fringes of his bright, colorful world. The concerning discovery he made was not a monster in a cave, but a devastating truth buried deep within his own legacy, a truth that now threatens to swallow his light whole. The discovery, a corruption at the core. The specifics of Finn's finding are still trickling out, shrouded in the respectful silence of those closest to him. However, the emotional contours are painfully clear. It began, as momentous discoveries often do, with a seemingly innocuous research project. Finn, driven by a desire to understand the very foundations of his home, was tracing the historical lineage of a revered artifact, an object long held to be a symbol of purity and ancient good. What he unearthed was not confirmation of its sanctity, but evidence of its original, catastrophic corruption. The artifact, which stood for centuries as a beacon of hope, was not a gift from the benevolent founders of his civilization, but a carefully concealed relic of an ancient betrayal. The good it embodied was an intentional, cosmetic veneer designed to mask a primal, destructive force that was simply redirected, not destroyed. Finn discovered that the very fabric of his beloved world was not spun from goodness, but from a desperate, 1,000-year-old lie. The weight of deception. Imagine the crushing weight of that realization. Every heroic act Finn had ever performed, every battle won in the name of this good, was fundamentally compromised. It wasn't just a revelation of ancient error. It was a realization that the peace and prosperity of his home were built upon a massive, deliberate act of deceit. This is the news that has sent shockwaves through the community. It's not just that something concerning was found, but that this something is a systemic rot, a foundational flaw that means Finn's entire mission, the very essence of his being, was built on sand. The hero's isolation, a sadness too personal. The tragic depth of this news lies not only in the revelation itself, but in its crushing effect on Finn's own psyche. The loss of the guiding star. For years, Finn had a crystal-clear moral compass. Black and white, good and evil. He navigated life with the certainty of a righteous warrior. Now that compass spins wildly. If the highest, most revered symbol of his world is founded on a lie, where does true good reside? The internal conflict. His sadness is a profound disillusionment. It is the grief of a hero forced to question his lifetime of service. Was he a hero or merely a convenient tool in a greater, more sinister, and deeply cynical plot orchestrated by those long dead? The emotional fallout. Those who know Finn describe a change in his light. The characteristic fiery enthusiasm has been replaced by a quiet, devastating stillness. He no longer rushes to the adventure. He sits in contemplative silence, wrestling with the ethical enormity of the discovery, a secret he must carry alone. The cruelest part of Finn's concerning find is the isolation it imposes. The nature of the discovery, the foundational lie, is so volatile that to reveal it publicly would cause mass panic, potentially leading to the very collapse the original deceivers were trying to prevent. Finn, the boy who always brought the truth to light, must now carry this ultimate, terrible secret. He cannot share it, he cannot fight it openly, and he cannot undo it without risking the entire system he swore to protect. He is not just sad, he is tragically burdened. He must smile and continue to defend a world whose very heart he knows to be hollow. This is a burden that would crush any ordinary person, and it is the great, terrifying test of our young hero's maturity. The future, a question mark in the darkness. The news of Finn's find is sad because it represents the moment his world irrevocably broke. The innocent hero is gone, replaced by a complex, wounded man who must now make choices with consequences he has never before faced. The impossible dilemma. Finn faces an impossible ethical dilemma. Reveal the truth. He could expose the ancient lie, but in doing so risk plunging his civilization into chaos and terror, potentially causing more harm than the lie itself. Perpetuate the lie. He could remain silent, becoming a guardian of the very deception he despises, for the sake of functional peace. This choice would shatter his moral code, but save his people from immediate anarchy. The concerning find is not an object. It is the impossible choice forced upon him. The grief we feel for Finn is the grief for a pure soul being forced to choose the lesser of two evils, forever tainting his perfect idealism. The power of silent resilience. The narrative arc of Finn's life has always been one of growth. But this discovery is the kind of challenge that fundamentally changes a person. The high engagement with this sad news is a reflection of our universal pain when we see pure, good, confronted with insurmountable, cynical darkness. We all root for Finn because he represents the best parts of us, the part that believes absolutely in right and wrong. The sadness today is the acknowledgement that his greatest adventure will not be a physical battle, but a lonely, mental, and ethical war to define what a hero truly is when the guiding principles of his universe have proven false. His heroism will no longer be loud and obvious, but a quiet, internal act of resilience, the heartbreaking effort of remaining good in a world that, at its core, is founded on a lie. A call to compassion. Our hearts break for Finn because we recognize the end of an era. The loss of his innocence is the loss of our own. He is no longer the unburdened champion, but a wounded soul carrying the weight of ancient sins. His strength will now be measured not by the size of the monsters he slays, but by his ability to navigate this profound moral gray area without succumbing to the crushing despair of his discovery. We can only watch in sad anticipation as our hero attempts to forge a new path of truth and heroism in a world he now knows is fundamentally broken.